Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, "With time and money on his side, he put his plan into action." My mum told me a great story of the vengeance one of her clients enacted after being harassed by a tyrannical HOA. The guy is a surgeon, and very wealthy. He bought a piece of property and the HOA started really messing with him bad, ripping his trees out, fining him large sums of money for infractions that were baseless, etc. When he would fight them and ask for proof, they would retaliate by messing with him even more. They fined him for the paint color of the house, which was already on there when he bought the property, so he paid to have the house repainted. Then they fined him because the mailbox wasn't the right color. The list goes on and on. This guy even stopped coming to the property after a while and lived in another house because he couldn't take it anymore. The pettiness and retaliation were becoming overwhelming and he was done. The revenge, being a pretty prestigious surgeon, and having a ton of money, he decided to buy every piece of property that became available in the neighborhood. This plot took over a year of buying property after property in this neighborhood. He would put them in names of different businesses he owned as to not raise suspicion. The HOA didn't even see it coming. He showed up to an HOA meeting where they were re-electing all of the board members for the year to discuss a grievance he had about one of the many letters he had received, fining him for yet another ridiculous violation. They basically told him to pound sand. He said something to the effect of, "Here's a list of all the properties I now own in this neighborhood, and that makes me the majority owner. I'm disbanding this HOA." They were stunned, but there was nothing they could do. He defeated them. Next one is titled, "Commit Insurance Fraud? Go to jail and end up in a terrible financial situation." A long time ago and not far down the street from here, my girlfriends and I were cruising up and down the main thoroughfare of our city as teenagers that have just gotten their first cars tend to do. This is the main drag through the heart of our city, and it's where everyone would race on Friday and Saturday nights, kill time cruising before a movie, or just to hang out and be seen. We're driving along on a beautiful Friday afternoon when from the back seat, I spot a horde of teenage boys in a parking lot waiting for traffic to clear, so they can race. They've parked their crotch rockets and cars like they're for sale, every door open, hoods up, underglow shining, speakers blasting. And like half of these guys have their shirts off. Being a red-blooded teenage girl, I shout, "Oh my God, Kirsten, look." But Kirsten was driving the car. To this day, we both try to take the blame for this because I should not have shouted for her to look, and she should not have turned around to look. So, of course, we rear-ended the car in front of us at about 15 miles per hour. Not bad at all. We got out, and Kirsten and Sarah called their moms from the parking lot, and I called the police while checking on the people in the other car. The passenger jumped out and pointed at me, tells me to stay away, then went to the payphone. Yes, this happened that long ago, at the fast food joint we were in front of. I peeked into the car to ask the driver if they're okay. She was leaned all the way back in her seat, she wouldn't look at me, but she said she couldn't feel her arms. So, I'm like, oh crap. Hey dispatch, send an ambulance too. This lady says she can't feel her arms, and then I started freaking out. Did we just paralyze some poor woman because we're dumb, hormonal idiots? Oh God, we just ruined somebody's life. I'm asking the driver if there's anything I can do. I think I actually asked if I could make her more comfortable. I was panicked and just repeating the dispatcher at that point, "Don't worry, the ambulance will be here soon." And then she turned her head towards me and asked who hit her. I was confused and asked her what she meant. She wanted to know which one of us was driving. But I didn't want to tell her for some reason. I was just like, no, don't worry about that. You'll be fine, and she wasn't having it. She got upset and started screaming at me to tell her who was driving. So, I just screamed back that she was crazy, and I wasn't going to tell her anything. And then the dispatcher says, "Miss, please just back away from the vehicle." Swear to God that dispatcher was psychic or something because I ducked out of the car right as the driver swung her meaty fist at my head. And then it was on. She ripped off her seatbelt, not paralyzed after all, and launched out of the car, running around the rear end to come at me. So, I ran screaming around the front end. Straight out of a cartoon, she turned around and ran around the other side of the car, making me turn around to run the opposite way, back and forth around the front and back of the car until she committed to a side, and I just ducking ran the other way to the parking lot. Kirsten was banging on the door of the fast food joint, but an employee was holding the door closed and shaking her head. I will never forget that poor woman's face. Sarah was on the phone crying. I could hear the sirens in the distance and dispatch was entirely too calm asking me to explain the problem. On the 911 recording, you can just hear me panting, "What the crap, what the crap, what the crap," with every exhale. You guys, this woman was short, stout, and she ran like a ducking juiced up bull. She was so fast. I could feel her catching up to me, so I pivoted to the side, and she whooshed past me. And she continued right towards Sarah, clotheslined her as she ran by, and headed to Kirsten, who at this point had seen the writing on the wall and was running away. But there wasn't really anywhere to go except for the entrance of the drive-through. So, Kirsten and the enraged driver disappeared around the back of the building. I was picking Sarah up off the ground when an ambulance, fire truck, and 2 police cruisers pulled up. EMT popped out first, and we ran at him screaming nonsense about a crazy lady and the drive-through. And then Kirsten came flying around the far corner of the building with beast mode right on her heels. I've never seen somebody stop so fast. She came out around the corner, saw all the emergency responders, stopped, and dropped like a fallen tree before pretending to shake uncontrollably. This lady tried to pull a fake seizure right in front of the EMTs and police. Her friend, the passenger, who had been on the payphone this whole time, dropped down next to her and started wailing that somebody needed to do something and help her and arrest us. Really coming hard with the dramatics. So, the EMTs loaded her up, and they went off to the hospital while the 3 of us gave our statements to the police. And we assumed that was the end. Insurance was supposed to deal with anything else, right? First, the driver tried to sue all 3 of us and the insurance company. Pain, suffering, medical bills, loss of income, the whole works. She claimed that after rear-ending her, I dragged her out of her car, and Kirsten was actually chasing her through the drive-through. The 911 recording disproved her claim of being pulled from the vehicle, and CCTV footage from the fast food restaurant showed her as the pursuer. The suit was eventually dismissed, and she had to pay our lawyers' fees, which really sucked for her because Sarah's lawyer got photos of her frolicking at a music festival when she was supposedly suffering from whiplash, double knee injuries, and constant dizziness. Boom, that's insurance fraud. She spent a year in jail and paid a hefty fine. And we assumed that was the end. But no, a few months after she was released, we all began to find dead animals left on our front porches, in our mailboxes, in the swimming pool, hung over the side mirror of the car, etc. Definitely some unusual places to find dead animals. The phone calls started, hang-ups, faxes, random screaming. Kirsten swore she saw a car following her between school and the coffee house. Sarah thought she saw a similar car in her neighborhood a few times. We all knew who was doing it, but the cops couldn't really do anything without proof. Our parents were upset because this was the dawn of the digital era, and we all had cell phones, but crazy driver lady was blowing up the landline, and it was harassing our parents more than us. And the dead animals were terrifying our siblings. So, Kirsten's mum bought a guard dog, and the next time somebody dropped a dead raccoon in their petunias, Duke was gonna give them what for. So, everyone in Kirsten's house was sitting back enjoying a little TV one night when a noise was heard in the bushes right before a dead squirrel was hurled through the open window. And Duke leaped right out the window and tackled crazy ducking driver lady in the goddamn petunias. She had dressed in all black, ski mask, gloves, and everything. Literally the uniform of the nefarious. Kirsten said Duke had her whole shoulder in his big mouth and was pinning her down while they called the police. She was hauled off to jail while the cops searched her car found down the road. They found drugs, stolen credit cards, pills, a knife, trash bags, and cleaning supplies. To get her to plead to a whole slew of lesser charges, the prosecutor threatened to pursue kidnapping charges even though it was a real stretch. She ended up being sentenced to 5 years, served 3. Thankfully, none of us have heard from her since. But it took over a decade for her to pay us off. The crazy thing is, she's got money. She just refused to make payments, so the court started taking it out of her tax returns and depositing it on debit cards they gave us. Next one is titled, Refuse to Pay a Penny. I'll sue for more than what you owe. I'm 22 female, got my first job when I was 16 at a specialty restaurant with 5 locations. I worked at the busiest location. It was summer at the time, so I was working 5 days a week from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. The restaurant is set up like Panda Express, Manchu Wok or those other Asian restaurants in food courts where the food is laid out, and you pick what you want from the selection, except it's not in a food court and has its own seating, so more like a cafeteria, IKEA setup. My job is to serve people their food, cashier, and some minor prep. By 1 p.m., all the cooks have left. I am left with a dishwasher, busboy until closing. 3 weeks have passed, and I haven't gotten paid anything. Turns out the owner, whom I've met a couple of times, is spending all her revenue in the casino, and a lot of staff aren't getting paid. Some employees have worked here for years and have over $5,000 of unpaid work. I talked to the owner, and she said I can take my daily income from the cash register, cash, no tax, after I do all my closing as long as I write everything down. I didn't care at this time as long as I was getting paid. I didn't know much about the law either since it was my first job. But I did provide them my SIN, SSN, so I was hired legally to my knowledge. The manager that hired me never mentioned cash payments when she hired me. I was getting my pay from the register for about a week until one of my co-workers found out. Obviously she got jealous and told everyone. Since these people have thousands of unpaid work, they felt like it was unfair that I was getting paid, and they weren't. At this time, the owner was out of country, so I stopped taking my pay from the register to avoid getting in conflict with my co-workers. I mean, the owner will pay me eventually, right? I was young, naive, and did not know better. During one of my shifts, a delivery came in, and they wanted to get paid on the spot. I did not have cash at the register, and I couldn't get a hold of my co-workers to deal with the situation, so the delivery guy eventually left with all the products. That night, the owner's husband gave me a call, and he was furious that we did not get the delivery since we needed it for tomorrow because we're low on products. He dropped by to leave cash for the delivery and made me wait until 12 midnight for the delivery to come, unpaid. I was left by myself in the restaurant, and I was crying. It was a very stressful situation for me, and working here led me to smoke cigarettes. I don't smoke anymore. This was my breaking point. I wanted to quit, but I was afraid that I wouldn't get all my hard-earned money. The job is easy, but all the coworker drama and the shitty treatment of the owners got to me. I kept working in this location until the end of summer with over $3,000 of unpaid work, not adjusted with overtime and holiday pay. I did eventually get to talk to the owner on the phone, and all I got was, "It is what it is." I did not show up for work on the last day of summer. After I didn't show up, I filed a claim with the Department of Labor, Ministry of Labor. When school started, the manager from their other location asked me to come work for her on weekends. Of course, I said no, but eventually agreed when she said that I will be paid after my shift with cash. The owner never came here to take the revenue for her gambling, and she's still out of the country, so I did get paid after my shift. Everyone that worked here was a lot nicer too since everyone was getting paid. I asked my unemployed friends to drop off their resumes. The owner did not know that I was friends with these people, and she eventually hired one of my friends as a dishwasher, busboy to work with me. The manager leaves early on weekends, and it's just me and my friend in the restaurant, so I would give out food to my friends, customers that I know, and family, for free. Not my food cost, so I did not give a duck. I know it's a whole move, but keep in mind the $3,000 that they still owe me. Everyone that worked here knows all the BS that's happening. Business has always been doing great to the point that the owner was able to have 5 locations. Everyone was getting paid on time and was given bonuses during the first few years of the business until the owner started going to the casino. Her attitude changed and stopped taking care of the business. She would even get mad at the employees for paying the bills instead of keeping the cash for her gambling. We've had times that our electricity got cut off and couldn't operate as a restaurant. Producers, suppliers are also refusing to deliver products unless we paid right away. They aren't getting paid on time as well. The owner mainly ever goes to the restaurant locations to take cash. Her husband does most of the work and even takes cash out of his pocket to pay for the restaurant expenses. From what I've heard, their marriage went down the sewage since the wife started gambling and coming home from the casino without her car. There were also rumors that the husband cheated, which led to the wife's gambling problems. I believed all the rumors since it all made sense at the time, but no confirmation until now. I also found out that one of their locations had to close down because they did not pay the lease. They're now left with 4. We're the only second location I'm working at, where the staff gets paid on time except for the manager, who also has unpaid wages from years before, and my $3,000 from summer. Everyone else here is new and is getting paid on time. 2 weeks have passed since I worked part-time at the other location. I started getting calls from the labor department about my claim. I told them everything: staff not getting paid, or the owner is paying cash, plus all the shitty treatment that I did not mention above. Of course, the government doesn't like it when we don't pay our taxes. I kept a record of my hours in my notebook. I also had text messages from my co-workers about the working conditions of this place. I kept working here while my claim was being processed and while the owner is out of the country. Eventually, they got the letter a couple of days after the owner came back, and she was enraged. "How do you have the audacity to work here after you file a claim against us?" She wasn't aware that I didn't show up for my shift when I was working at the first location and was hired by the manager in the current location. So, I got fired. I went on with school and eventually got paid $5,000 plus for my unpaid hours and the trouble. The labor department gave them crap as well for not paying a minor. It seemed like they were taking advantage. That was basically my first paycheck, quite a lot of money for a 16-year-old. I started working at a food court elsewhere, totally legal, it's a franchise. One day, I was approached by one of the cooks at the first location who recognized me. They all knew what I did and that I got paid, and he wanted to know how to file a claim. I told him everything, what he needs to do, and all the proof, evidence that he can provide. I also told him that whoever files a claim will get paid, and I encouraged him to tell everyone. 2 months later, my friends that knew about the situation started tagging me on an article posted on Facebook about the restaurant. Over 4 people have filed for a claim, and the owner is forced to pay over $50,000 plus for unpaid wages, overtime, and interest, plus $2,500 plus administrative fees. I later on found out that they got audited, and more people started filing claims. A lot of people that worked there before and are still owed their wages also filed for a claim. A food inspection in one of the other locations uncovered several serious health and sanitation infractions. All 4 of their locations eventually shut down. I know it's not an intentional revenge, and the restaurant could have closed down anytime due to their debts. Although my friends still joke about it to this day that I added fuel, spark to the fire, kindle that led to the closure of all their remaining locations. I'm just glad I got my hard-earned money. Next one is titled, "This HOA Didn't Last Long." I spent years saving up for the down payment for my first house. It was a new neighborhood, and the HOA had just been established with a retired doctor serving as the first president. I had 2 flag holders on the 2 posts in front of my porch. I flew the Tennessee state flag and another flag that I would switch up from time to time. One month, I decided to fly the Culpeper flag, a militia in the Revolutionary War. The HOA president came knocking at my door demanding I take it down because his wife was British and she was offended. I told him in nice words that he could get bent, and so he tried to fine me. I contested it with the board and got the fine overturned. Later on, he'd try to bust me for other things. I told him I do not want him on my property at any time, and if I catch him on my plot a good couple hundred feet from the sidewalk and surrounded by trees on the other 3 sides, I will call the cops. I left him a notice on his door and let the HOA board know about the notice. I came home a week later to a fine because the lettering on my door was not standard. It included a picture up close and a signed confirmation from the president. I walked over to the HOA president's house and got into a verbal argument with him. I called the cops and eventually took him to court, which resulted in a restraining order. It got so messy after that, the HOA dissolved and my neighbors threw a huge party. Last one is titled, "Although he went to bat for a friend, this freelancer realized his friend was a thief." While freelancing on a sweet gig that came out of the blue, I found out that I would be working with Sean, a guy who was in my group at a former ad agency. Awesome, a friendly face. Sean was a geek. No one liked him, and as his associate creative director, supervisor, I looked out for him. He seemed to try hard, and I didn't understand why everyone excluded him. During 2 rounds of layoffs, I went to bat for the guy and saved his job, promising to work with him. He was always busy, and soon after I moved on to a new job. So I looked forward to working with him some more and proving those mean jerks from our old agency wrong. While working this freelance job, Elle sensed something was wrong soon after it began. Sean had no ideas. None. He literally brought a blank pad in day after day. Excuses were that he was tired, the assignment confused him, etc. I was nervous, but I was stuck. So, since we were on a team, I shared my ideas, our only ideas, with him. We had to present an hour after lunch. During lunch, I had to go to a doctor's appointment with my wife, who was seriously ill. On my way back to the office, the cab I was in had an accident. A jerk in a Lexus slammed into us. No one was hurt, but it totaled both cars. Furthermore, I didn't feel comfortable leaving the cabbie, as he was foreign and spoke little English. The guy who hit us was ranting, so I stayed to give a statement to the police. I called Sean to explain and asked if he minded handling the meeting and asked him to relay my situation. Then, this loser presented my work, claimed it was all his, and they sent me home because Sean nailed it. Salt in the wound? It took 9 months to get paid for the time I did put in. All along, I tried to explain, but no one believed me. He copied my notes in his own writing and submitted them as proof. As far as they were concerned, I was riding this guy's coattails. I could have kicked his nuts for a week without getting bored. 2 months later, he was found out when he tried it again. Dozens of former co-workers called to rub my nose in it. Still think we're just picking on Sean? I learned that sometimes people are shunned because they deserve it. Thanks for listening.